Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and this is a video response to Bash Biznet's Why Bash Doesn't LARP video. And in it, Bash makes a number of very interesting and very relevant points as to why he personally doesn't find LARP appealing. For those of you who aren't aware, LARP is an acronym for live action roleplay. It's basically acting out the sort of stuff that you would normally do in a tabletop game. To varying degrees, you have your full contact LARPs where they're sort of latex foam weaponry that you actually fight with, all the way down to the old sort of mind's eye theatre LARPs, which are more sort of dining room LARPs where things are resolved with challenges like rock, paper, scissors or stuff like that. But the subject is treated very sensitively and with a great deal of thought. As he says in the video himself, he's not looking to knock people who do LARP, he's just simply saying it's not for him. And that's absolutely fair enough, since everyone has different likes and dislikes. And I'm going to put a link to Bash's original video down below, or you can click on him there to watch his video, and I highly recommend you at least give it a look. Now, in his video, Bash talks about how LARPs can have up to around about 50 people in it. Well, that very much depends on the type of LARP you're doing. There are the sort of mind's eye theatre sort of dining room style LARPs where yes, about 50 people, 20 people, whatever. However, there are also much larger or festival style LARPs. In fact, I roleplay in two main systems at the minute. One of them is the Lorien Trust system here in the United Kingdom, which is one of the, if not the largest systems in the United Kingdom, and has thousands of people attend their 4 main events each year, which are held within the grounds of a stately home. However, each of the nations or the player factions has their own much smaller and more sort of personal events that relate to their plot over the course of the year. I also roleplay in the Outcast system, which is a more personal, small and more contained system, which is very, very enjoyable. I'm getting a great deal of enjoyment out of that, and I mainly NPC or monster in that. Certainly I did when I started, and I've now started to help out with running it a little bit. I've also run previously, although it's no longer running, a small Hunt of the Reckoning based LARP system, which I sort of adapted the mind's eye theatre rules so it didn't rely on rock, paper, scissors, because that tended to lead to really long drawn out combats, and I'm not a big fan of that. Now, as Bash says in his video, costuming is an important part of LARP, and I'm going to put a few pictures up of myself in various kits that I've worn at LARP throughout the years. Whilst this video is going on, you can see them at the side there. Certainly I know for myself that when I originally went, I'd begged and borrowed the basic thrown together kit off a few friends of mine, but after I'd been there for a little while, I was looking around at all these people in all these cool costumes and all this armor, this intricate kit, and I was like, oh, next time I turn up, I want to have some cool kit like that as well. And that's very handy because it's led to me acquiring skills that I might not otherwise have come into contact with, such as knowing how to like rivet stuff, minor bits of leather working, making latex weapons, working with foam, using liquid latex, sewing, various other bits and pieces that I didn't know before and might not have ever picked up to any degree, although I don't claim to be a master at all of them, but I might not have picked up any of it had I not had the impetus that live action roleplay gave to me, and that instinct to go, no, I really want to look like I've got some cool kit next time I go. Now, obviously the downside to that is that buying kit, armor, latex, foam weapons, etc. isn't cheap, especially not when you figure in the price of events as well. However, that is one of the things that spurred both myself and my wife. In fact, you can see one of the bits of kit that my wife made for one of my first characters, the giant furry top hat up there. That was one of my first Lorien Trust characters. And not having a great deal of money and not wanting to spend loads on kit was what spurred myself and my wife, although my wife was already sort of quite a skilled seamstress, but it certainly spurred me on to attempt to make more of my own stuff because it allowed me to do to not only personalise it, but also to do it at a much cheaper price than just buying stuff would and my funds would otherwise allow me to do. Now, in his video, Bash talks about there being an established social hierarchy in LARPs. And he's quite right. If a LARP system has been going for a long period of time, there can be people who've been playing characters for years and years who are very powerful and are orders of magnitude more powerful than anyone who's just playing a starting character. In the same way as if you joined a D&D group and you genned up a first level cleric and everyone else was like a 10th level character, there will be a noticeable power difference. And Bash is quite right, it can be difficult to break into these well-established social circles and to get your foot on the first rung of that ladder and start working your way up. He gives a very salient restaurant analogy where he talks about starting at the bottom as a dish or pot washer, working your way up through sous chef to becoming a Gordon Ramsay-esque main chef, a one-man at the top. And that's a very good analogy. However, it does assume that ending up at the top of your hierarchy is your main aim when it comes to LARP. And Bash has said he has no real interest in doing that. And to be honest, I don't blame you, Bash, nor do I. When I go to LARP events, it's far more about socialising and sharing my love of the hobby with my friends and people whom live all over the country and whom otherwise I might not get to see an awful lot. Certainly a lot of people I now regard as friends I've met at live action events and sort of kept in touch with them via social media. But it's a lot more difficult to say to people who live in different areas of the country, oh, we're going to run a quick tabletop session. Do you all fancy driving miles and miles to come and visit me? And we'll just do a bit of tabletop. Than it is to say, oh, we're all going to meet up in this central location for an entire weekend and we're all going to have a few drinks, have a few laughs, get some role play done. People seem a lot more willing to do that. Now, of course, using things like Google Plus, Hangouts, etc., you can do tabletop with people who are far distant, but there's a limit to how many people you can reasonably run a tabletop game for. Or certainly for myself, there's a limit to how many people I'm comfortable with running a tabletop game for. When it's a LARP event, though, you can get a lot more people into the event. Like I said, the Lorien Trust system I go to has thousands of people there. So it's a lot easier to get you and your 10 mates together or whatever and all be involved in the same game or supporting each other and having a great time than it would be to, certainly for me, to run a tabletop game for 10 people. Now, climbing the social hierarchy has never really held a great appeal to me because when I don't get many holidays during the year, and LARP is, as I said earlier, a considerable expense. However, so when I do go, I want to relax, enjoy myself, spend time with my friends, and not worry too much about being super immersed in the game all the time. And that's one of the reasons why the more sort of immersive LARPs, to be honest, don't really appeal to me, because for me it's a holiday and a role play with both parts being as important as the other. I don't want to feel almost guilty for going along and just enjoying myself and relaxing because I'm not getting super immersed and super focused on my character. What I want to do is I want to go along, relax, have a few laughs, have a few drinks, socialise with my friends, have a bit to eat, all the enjoyable bits of camping, but also get a bit of role play thrown in there as well. And a bit of fake fighting with foam latex weapons is always good fun. Now, performing in front of other people can be nerve-wracking, as Bash rightly said. I like to think of myself as a fairly sort of forward person. I'm not the shyest of people. However, even I have found occasions where it's been quite nerve-wracking, but you only have to put yourself out there and perform in front of as big or as small a group as you want. If you want to play someone who's a little bit more withdrawn, you can do that. I've played characters who've been very loud and bombastic, who've been sort of out there, been sort of in the front line shouting. They've been captains of military guards, shouting orders at people. And I've also played characters who are taking a bit more of a back seat, that they have a bit more of a sort of manana attitude, and they just like to sit back and enjoy the creature comforts and let life drift on by. And I've enjoyed all of those characters. Now, Bash talks about the fact that if he ever did do a LARP, he'd prefer to be an NPC or a monster rather than a player, because he's worried about the fact that being a new player as opposed to an established person, he might get ignored and not have anyone to roleplay with. Now, to split this into two, most of the events in the UK, and I can't speak for events outside the UK, but most of them in the United Kingdom offer a discount to their events for people who come along and monster or NPC for that entire event, because effectively you're doing them a favour. Because unlike tabletop, where a single GM can represent all of the NPCs, you need a cast of extras in a LARP. So by actually attending, you are doing the organisers a favour. You're allowing them to run their game. So most of them will give you a bit of a discount, or in some cases, such as with Outcast, they even provide you with food and they give you bunks and you get in for free. All you have to do is get yourself to the actual event and monster it, since they're grateful that you've come along to help them run their event. So that's perfectly possible. Most events, certainly in the UK, are crying out for more people to go along an NPC and monster. So they'd be more than happy for you to do that. When it comes to the second part of that sentence, where worrying about being ignored as a new character, now I've not really noticed this myself, and I can certainly see how that might seem the case, and you might be worried about that. However, I know that there are a large number of people, myself included, at live action roleplay events who deliberately keep half an eye out for newer or inexperienced or uncertain looking people who seem to be a little bit withdrawn and are maybe not getting as involved in the event as they could, and will, assuming the person doesn't object, attempt to draw that person in by interacting with them and getting them involved in what's going on until they're quite happy to strike out on their own. Now, if you actually want to play a character who's a bit more withdrawn and is stepping back, and you say, oh, I'm not really interested in getting involved, that's fine. Most people aren't going to pressure you, of course. But if you're sat there sort of wanting to get involved but not really knowing how, these people, like I say, myself included, will try and bring you in via their more established characters and get you involved with stuff until you're more comfortable engaging with other people and striking out on your own. Now, in closing, Bash says he loves the idea of LARP, but the execution in some manner sort of falls a little bit short for him, which is a shame. Now, I can sort of see the point here, because I don't think tabletop is better than LARP in the same way I don't think that LARP is better than tabletop. I just think the two of them are very different aspects of the same hobby. Do I think one of them is particularly more immersive than the other? No, to be honest, I don't. You can find non-immersive tabletop games in the same way you can find non-immersive or more casual LARP games. You can also find really immersive sort of 24-hour time in LARPs, as you can find really immersive tabletop games. It's up to you to pick a game that suits you. However, I don't think any of them is better. As I say, I just think they're different. Is it easier for me to imagine that the four guys wearing masks with foam weapons facing off against me are orcs than it is for me to imagine them when there's a GM sat around describing them? No, not really. Obviously, I can still see they're actually just normal guys wearing masks and costuming. And yes, the costuming can help bring you in or give you visual clues to enable you to role play your character better or to hook your role play upon. But you can also have pictures of NPCs, props in a tabletop game. And seeing a picture of an orc is no more or less real to me than seeing a person wearing an orc mask. They're both just hooks for me to use my imagination on to help me get into that frame of mind that allows me to play my character. So I don't think one's better than the other. I just think they're very, very different. So I've rambled on for long enough, and I hope that if you enjoyed this video, you'll consider clicking on like and subscribe by clicking on the red dice up in the corner there. If you have any comments, please put them in the box down below or hit me up in the Google Plus links. Until I see you next time, happy gaming.